very good question. Beth, start us.
There's someone else.
Recording stopped.
So restart it.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. So there was a very, very good question that was asked while we were at break by Kepha. And he's still kind of hung up about in the land, outside of the land, that type of thing. And what I told him is this. Here's my answer. Is we have to understand that we're in two places at the same time. Okay? In Leviticus, where we're reading, we've got to remember it is a time period. What has happened? Israel has come out of Egypt. They're in the wilderness. They have built the golden calf. God has rebuked them for it. He's given them the plans for the building of the tabernacle. And what we have taking place is the initiation of all of that. Okay? Really what we have is the initiation of the worship of God. Of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God of Israel. Okay? Up until this point, we don't have it recorded. And I seriously doubt they did it because they were always complaining, oh, we don't got water, we don't got this, we don't got that. And they complained about they specifically complained about not having meat. So that would suggest to me that they wasn't killing the cows and the goats and the sheep that they had.
They weren't in the habit of it.
Yeah, they were
well,
not.
then again,
but
they were in Goshen with animals, so they must have been killing animals.
You would think.
Because the Egyptians despised them for that.
Yes.
Anyway.
But they're in the wilderness now.
With the animals.
Yes, but they're constantly moving, so the whole slaughter of animal type thing could be time consuming.
It could be halted.
You know. But even if they did, let's just say that they did. At this point, God is correcting it and saying, this is what I want to take place. Now, here's what we've got to understand about Mishkan before we go any further.
Is Joyce on? There she is.
Okay? Here's what we've got to understand is animal sacrifice was done in all cultures. And there were certain stigmas attached to animal sacrifice. And the book of Leviticus is removing all of that stigmatism. Okay? 2 weeks ago when I taught the tabernacle, I asked you, could you draw it? Did any of you practice on drawing it?
No.
No. Okay?
We shouldn't.
You should.
Isn't there a commandment not to do a duplicate?
No.
What did you want them to do?
There's a commandment. I wanted them to learn the layout of the tabernacle. Learning the layout of the tabernacle, there's no command against that. Whether we should rebuild it, there is a question about that. Specifically, the ark, because of the angels. Okay?
The image thing?
Yeah, and I talk
Not
about.
to have any images?
Yeah, I talk about that in that teaching. We'll go watch it. Yes.
So, when they actually built the temple, how are they gonna do it if they're not supposed to have images of angels?
No, the next. Well.
Just quick answer.
Okay, quick answer. That's actually very much a mystery. How are we going to do it? It's very much a mystery. You have the group in Israel that have built mini sanctuaries off-site trying to prepare to build the temple. They built it, and they've torn it down, they built it, they keep rebuilding it off-site, miniature versions of it, so that when it comes time to build, they know how to build it.
Well, don't you think the Lord Hashem will reveal that?
Like I said, but there's a question about should you do that?
No.
There is a question. Should you be doing that?
Okay.
I think in Florida they did do
There's an actual question. Should you build a model of the tabernacle? There's a question whether you should do that.
okay.
But anyway, that doesn't stop people from doing it, you know. If in your consciousness, you don't feel like it should be done, then don't do it. But that doesn't mean you can't learn the layout of it and how it is, because that layout is very important. And to what I'm teaching, it's very important, okay? So, and now that I brought all of that up,
That one doesn't work.
can you see me?
That one doesn't work. That one doesn't work.
So, roughly, something to this effect, okay? Out here, we have an altar, we have a basin, and here what do we have?
The bread,
The table of showbread,
the menorah,
the menorah,
The lampstands,
and what goes here?
the incense,
the sacrifice.
The incense, and what's in here?
the covenant, the Ark of Covenant
What else?
with Torah,
Okay,
tablets, and
The rod. No?
and
the rod and the pot of manna.
I don't know.
All of this is important.
But it's outside, right? Not inside.
Inside, the rod and the pot of manna is outside of the Ark of the Covenant. The only thing inside of the Ark of the Covenant is the testimonies, the tablets of testimonies. So the inside, the holies of holies contain 3 articles. The holy place contains 3 articles, and the outer court contains 2 articles. This is important, okay? In the ancient Near East, temples were seen as the dwelling place of the god, and it was the place that the offerings that were given were seen as a food for the gods, that the gods literally ate the foods. Okay? That's in the ancient Near East. However, I want you to look at this. This is really important, because where does the sacrifices take place?
first entrance.
The outside, where everybody could see it. Never was the sacrifice taken into the place of the dwelling of God,
Why?
because God stopped the idea that Israel is feeding him.
Because he's feeding them.
Them. He's feeding them. Now, the argument that I could see against that is this right here. What was right here? Table of shewbread. Okay? There was bread in there. But who owned that bread? The priest ate that bread. So they would place it in there, and after a 24-hour period, they'd bring it out, and they would eat it in the open. So all food consumption was done in this area.
So people could see.
So people could see that nothing was being taken to God to feed him. He was feeding the people. He was feeding. This is a unique feature. To us, it may not seem like a big deal, but in the ancient Near East, this was huge. This was huge. The animals never went inside. Food, libations, bread, meat never went into the inner sanctum here. It stayed out here.
Except manna, which is.
Bread, not manna. Manna is the stuff that fell. Okay? There was bread that was put here, but every day it was taken out and brought out. So what was placed in here? There was only one thing that was placed in here. The spices
Fragrance.
and fragrance. That was it. Okay? So this is unique to Israel. Okay? All sacrifices was done in public, so everybody could see it.
And that eating was done in public.
Yes.
Everybody.
And there was only one thing that could be eaten. There was only one sacrifice two sacrifices that could be eaten.
The bread is
The peace,
And
the bread,
what is it?
the grain offering.
The grain offering. Those are the only two that could be eaten. Now, the grain offering was eaten by the priest. But the peace offering, anyone could eat that.
people.
Okay? This is really important to understand. Okay? Any question on that? Okay. Go ahead.
Just to be on the same page, people will bring their peace offering. They will get slaughtered and burn there, and then they can bring that meat out and eat it.
They had to take it to a clean place.
Well,
It had to be eaten in a clean place. So normally it was eaten there.
Even there or outside that tabernacle.
Yeah.
You-
So every offering that we are reading about, every peace offering, it says that you have to bring it to the gate,
Yeah.
and it had to be slaughtered. Who slaughtered it?
the priest.
No.
The person who brought it
The person who brought it.
after laying hands on him.
Yes.
After they prayed on the person.
So I brought hand.
And just one.
One.
Okay.
Okay? We'll talk about that. That's key. We're going into our third component.
Is that the sin offering?
Hold on. All offerings you lay your hands on. Okay? All of them.
Who lays?
Wait. You're jumping ahead. I'll answer these questions, okay? We're getting into our third part, and our third part comes out of Hebrews. Okay? That without blood, there's no redemption. Or there's no forgiveness of sin. In fact, let's go look at the verse. Wait a minute, before we go there, let me do the second part of this. The first part is that God never received, Hashem never received food. Now here's the other thing that is unique, is that there was no music, there was no noise, there was no prayers. In fact, it was called the Tabernacle of Silence by the scholars because it was completely silent.
Wow.
But there's one exception, and I'll explain that in a moment. Why was the tabernacle silent? Because the tabernacle was silent.
Something's up with the audio,
Check the audio,
please.
please.
Say something.
Can you all hear me now?
No.
You know, say something.
Something. Anything but not this.
It's already connected.
Oh, she's not.
Hey.
No, she's getting mad at me when it's already connected.
Nobody's mad at you.
Say something.
Something.
We have a fun one. They'll say airspeed.
Airspeed, yeah, really. Have you got it working?
It's not printing on the screen.
Yeah, no
That's fine if
CC.
it's not printing on the screen.
Yeah, that's what she just told me.
It's just saying.
But is she able to hear it?
Nope,
Just do
something
the audio
happened to
portion.
audio.
Can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
You're not speaking loud enough.
Am I
Oh,
not?
it's because you got further away, maybe?
Oh, probably. Okay, can you hear me now?
No.
How about now?
No. Come on
Yeah,
over and
we got-
fix it real quick.
I can't do that.
No, it's all right. So be it.
You know?
We can't hear you.
Well, he's gonna have to record it anyway.
Well, Beth, let people know that you're going to go out and come back in. Tell them to come back in.
Have a seat
Okay.
on the edge of our chairs.
So, just to review what we've said, there's two unique things about this. There was no food given to God, and it's called the Temple of Silence, or the Tabernacle of Silence. Why? Because there's two reasons behind this. When we look at Moses coming out of Egypt, right? with the 12 plagues, none of the plagues was brought on by words. It was all actions. What did he do? He or Aaron would raise the staff. They never spoke words. And 4 times, Pharaoh asked him to pray. He never prayed in front of the Pharaoh, nor did he ever declare to the plagues to leave. He would always go pray in silence by himself.
Now, see, I would like to address that a little bit. I lean toward that much more than, oh my God, the new offerings and the new sacrifices are words that are audibly spoken out of our mouths. I don't know. I
I'll get to
honestly
that.
do not know.
I'll get to that.
Cool.
I'll answer
They
that.
say, watch what you say.
Well, I get that.
Prayers-
But,
prayers
you know, the
before-
older I
Wait,
get,
wait,
the
listen
less
up,
I
what?
think I need to speak.
What?
Didn't prayers became the sacrificial? No?
You know what I mean?
That's what the rabbis say.
No, this here,
What
not.
did you say?
The rabbis say that because we don't have, and this is what Daniel was,
S'acabó.
this is what Daniel was talking about. The rabbis declared that since we don't have a temple, that by
Prayers
reading or praying,
Recording in progress.
thank you.
Ooh.
Is the audio back on?
I just got back inside.
Okay. The rabbis say that our prayers are the sacrifices. That's rabbinics. That's rabbinics. That's why if you look in the prayer Siddur, every morning you are praying, and most people skip it, you are praying the sacrifices. Most people skip the sacrifices. Well, the way the rabbinics teach it is that by praying and studying the sacrifices, it is as if you have done them.
Oh, wow. So
Okay.
after all this time of just skipping it,
Most people do because they find it boring.
But then in each prayer, it's like you start at the door, there's a prayer for it, and then you ascend. No?
No, the priest didn't pray. They didn't do
but I'm
anything.
saying now, the
But see, that's when you get into like mysticism and that type of concept.
Okay.
Which is the reason that they say that the tabernacle was silent. Because like Moses never prayed in front of Pharaoh, he always prayed a separate. And even when he prayed for the nation of Israel, he never prayed in front of them. He prayed privately. So even his intercessory prayer for the nation was done privately. Why? Because of magicians and incantations.
what does that mean?
Casting of spells.
No, I know what that means, but.
This was considered silent. The priest said nothing, so it could never be said that they were casting spells or that they were casting incantations.
I don't know why I keep thinking about burnt offering. Was it that quiet because Hashem was receiving burnt offerings?
Yes, he received the burnt offerings. But
And the sweet smelling
I
aroma.
promise you, I'm going to answer your question, okay?
Okay.
I promise you, just be patient. Okay? So, everybody can hear me? So, just to recap, okay? I just kind of said this over and over and over while you guys were coming back on. There's 2 things about the tabernacle that we need to understand. One is that all sacrifices were done publicly and in the open because they were not food, it was not food for God. Okay? Now, as I said, when we look at the peace offering, the fats is seen as a meal of God or the food of God. That's why we don't eat the 6 fats, because the fats of the animals belong to God. They're not ours to consume. It has nothing to do with health. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's because God says it belongs to Him. Okay? The second thing is that all services were done in silence. There was not a boom, 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 boom. There was no music going on. There was no prayer circles, okay? The stuff that we've gotten used to. It was quiet because the purpose was to remove the idea that spells were being cast, incantations were being done, or any such thing, any witchcrafty or sorcery was being done. It was completely silent. Now, I don't know if the guys on here caught it. There was a question asked about who killed the sacrifices. The text tells us that the bringer of the sacrifice is the one that killed it. They killed it, and in the case of the burnt offering, they skinned it and they chopped it into pieces. The priest took it and put it on the altar, along with the blood. And the blood was poured on the outside of the altar. Some translation says it was splashed on the altar, but there's some question about whether blood was actually splashed on the altar. Okay? Questions? Yes.
Which is the altar, the square or the circle?
The square. Because the circle is what they wash their hands in.
After.
Yeah, you're kind of bloody and you're about to go in.
Okay.
You got to clean up. Okay? Also, I brought out, I don't know if you guys heard it, in this section here, the holy place, the only thing that was brought in there was spices of fragrance. That's it. Okay? The bread. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's bread in there. But that bread was given to the priest, and the priest brought it out and ate it. Okay? It was theirs to eat. It was not God's. Okay? Now, after pounding the same point for the last 20 minutes, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, out of the 3 offerings, out of the 5 offerings, which 2 are mandatory?
Sin offering.
And?
Peace offering.
No. No.
Trespassing offering.
Keep going, we might get, the choice offering?
It was
No choice offering.
the sin offering
The sin offering.
and the trespass offering. Those are the only 2 that are mandatory.
Mhm.
The other 3, okay, the other 3 are free will, meaning you choose to give them. Now, let's talk about the purification offering. Okay? The purification offering, well, let's go to Hebrews. Let's go to Hebrews, chapter 9, verse 22. Okay? Everybody there? 9:22. It says, "And almost all things are by the law purged with blood. And without the shedding of blood is no remission, forgiveness." Okay? Everybody quotes the second half of this verse. And without shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. What does the first half say? And almost all things are by law purged by blood. Almost all things.
All things.
Okay? We have been taught that the forgiveness of sin comes through blood. This is not true. This is not true. The writer of Hebrews actually was thinking about our Torah portion today when he wrote this, because he begins the verse saying, "And almost all things are by the law purged with blood." Almost.
What are the things that are not?
Almost. Okay? This is the point I want you to realize. We have always been focused on the second part. That through the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Let's go to our sin offering. So go to Leviticus. Our Hatat.
Leviticus what?
Hatat is Leviticus chapter 4. Okay, are you there?
Me?
Yes, everybody.
Chapter 4 what?
Chapter 4.
What do you want?
Hold on.
Leviticus 4?
Leviticus 4.
No, it's I think.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Jump to... My notes are jumbled, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're doing disco.
You're enjoying the disco music in the back?
Where do you get Torah and disco at the same time?
Right, it brings memories.
What's the verse you're looking for? What does it say?
This was a major part of what I was going to share too. Okay, if you look at the burnt offering, it tells us in verse, let's look at chapter 1, verse 4.
What is it?
1:4.
Leviticus what?
Mhm.
1:4.
Okay? Now, this is not a sin offering, but look at what it says in verse 4. He is to lay his head upon the burnt offering so that it would be acceptable for him to make atonement on his behalf. But this is not a sin offering. Okay? But it can make atonement for you. Hold on. The key here is the laying on of hands. Every one of these has the hands laid on it. There are 3 ideas between the laying on of hands of these offerings. Okay? The first idea, all right? The first idea is the transference. Okay? that whoever lays his hands on the animal, it's transmission. Okay? The second idea is that the animal is a replacement or a substitution. And the third idea is ownership. There's a fourth idea of authority too, but the idea here is most English versions say that you lay his hand on it. That's not what it says in Hebrew. It says he leans upon it. Also, people will always draw this with what Kefa was saying, that both hands being laid on it. No, it says that he will lay his hand upon it. Now, there's some debate whether it's left hand or right hand, but in either case, the idea is dominant hand, maybe dominant hand. When we read on all the animals, the person offering the animal always leans upon the animal. Okay? Now, whether that means transmission, replacement, or substitution, or ownership, it can mean one, two, or all three of these things. But the Torah itself does not tell us what the leaning on of hands is.
Leaning or laying?
Leaning. Laying on hands is this. Leaning, you're putting your weight on the animal. You're leaning on the animal. It's not laying hands, it's leaning on the animal. Now, okay?
Okay.
So the idea is that we are leaning on the animal. Right?
Yes.
Now, which sins, chapter 4 of Leviticus, verse 1, says, Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Bnei Israel, saying, if anyone sins unintentionally in any of Adonai's mitzvot that are to be done, and commits any one of them, or if the anointed Cohen, this is where Mashiach comes from, anointed, sins so as to bring a guilt on the people, then let him offer for his sin that which he has committed, a young bull. Jump to verse 13. Now, if the whole congregation of Israel sins, but the deeds, listen to this, is hidden from the eyes of the community, yet they have done one of Adonai's mitzvot that were not to be done, then they are guilty. When the sin that they committed becomes known, then the community is offered to young a bull as a sin offering. And bring it before where? The tent of meeting. Right? Here, the elders of the congregation are to lean their hands. See that?
Yes.
Lean their hands. Verse 22, when the ruler sins and unwittingly does one of the mitzvot of Adonai in his hands, Adonai his God, that are not to be done, then he is guilty. When he sins, he is committed to be known to him. In other words, you've sinned, you didn't realize it, it was brought to your attention. Once you know about it, it's now become a sin to him. So once he becomes aware of that sin, it's his responsibility to offer sacrifice. Okay? Verse 24, he is to lay his hand upon the head of the goat and slaughter it at the place where the slaughter of the burnt offerings before Adonai. Okay? Verse 27, and when any one of the common people sins unwittingly, but by doing one of Adonai's mitzvot, see, this is repetitive, but notice it's breaking down the categories of people. The high priest, the ruler, the congregation, the individual. The individuals is a female goat, and he leans upon it, okay? Now, Numbers chapter 15, 27 through 29, basically goes through all of this that we just read. It says the same thing, okay? That when you do unintentional sins and bring a trespass offering or a sin offering, that you will be forgiven, okay? But turn to Numbers chapter 15. Because it brings out something else.
Numbers chapter
15.
15.
If we were to read from 27 to 29, it's exactly what we just read. Okay? Let's just read a couple verses. Let's look at 22. And when you err and not observe all these commands which Jehovah has spoken unto Moses, even all that Jehovah has spoken, from the day that Jehovah gave command onward throughout your generations, then it shall be that if you have done so unwittingly, without the knowledge of the congregation, that all the congregation shall offer one young bullock. Okay? You see that? So, notice it's unwillingly, unwittingly. Verse 27, if one person sin unwillingly. Verse 25, and the priest shall make atonement for all the congregation. Okay? Verse 28, and the priest shall make atonement for him, the individual. Okay? But notice, this set brings something very, very interesting. Verse 29. Now, previously in Leviticus it didn't say this, but it says it here. It says, you shall have one law for him that doeth aught unwillingly, for him who is homeborn of the children of Israel, and for the stranger that sojourneth amongst you. So the offerings were same both for Israel and the non-Israelite. Okay?
Just like the, what was it, the Sukkot offerings.
Exactly. Exactly. So when we think of Yom Kippur, we think of only Israel.
That's true, we do, that's what we think.
But it's saying anyone who is a stranger or a sojourner.
That's us.
That's us. Their sins shall be forgiven. So these offerings were not just for Israel. It was anyone that was associated with Israel. Okay? That's key number one. Key point number two. Look at verse 30. It says, but the soul that doeth aught with a high hand, whether to be homeborn or sojourner, the same blaspheme Jehovah, and that soul shall be cut off from among the people, because he hath despised the word of Jehovah, and hath broken his command. That soul shall be utterly cut off. So what kind of sin is it talking about? If there is an unintentional sin, there must be intentional sin. The one who commits intentional sin shall be cut off. Now in Leviticus, it's very interesting because when it talks about this, over in 17, hold on, I think it's over in chapter 17, it talks about that there was one from amongst Israel that went and gathered wood on Shabbat.
Right.
And they brought him to Moses, and they asked him, what is to be done with it? Moses says, I don't know. Let's take it before the Lord. He goes to Jehovah, and Jehovah says, kill him. And so he was put into the congregation, and the congregation of Israel stoned him to death, as God told him to, because he intentionally broke Shabbat.
Because he already knew that he wasn't supposed to.
Yes.
So he's gathering etz, or etzim.
Yes.
Wood and tree is a man. Is there something else there?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, right.
Okay?
So if you know to do something and you do it, that's intentional.
Now, broad categories, you've got intentional sin and unintentional. Now, there's a lot of subcategories under each of these.
Oh, big time.
Okay? Now, one of the big things under unintentional sin is forgotten sin. In other words, you knew to do something and you forgot to do it. That's considered an unintentional sin. Okay? So literally, there's really 3 levels of sin: intentional, unintentional, and forgotten. Okay? It can be seen that way.
Like past sin?
Like you, no. Like you knew that you needed to do something, but you forgot to do it. The great example that Leviticus gives is that you made an oath and you forgot to pay it.
Yeah.
Okay? So now you have to offer restitution. You have to pay the oath, you have to add 20% to it, and then give a sacrifice.
So the takeaway here is don't make oaths.
There's a time and place for it, but yes.
But overall,
Yes.
don't make oaths.
But only if you attach the name.
But in that time, the only way you make an oath is by attaching the name.
Yeah, but like right now in the oath,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yes.
Be careful what you agree to.
So that's the past, so how do we do it now?
Hold on, I'm not finished.
Yeah, Hesed and Hain. I think that needs to be added to all this.
Okay? Now, so Numbers tells us about the intentional sins. So we've got unintentional and intentional. But how does this deal with the blood? Okay? There is a verse, and I thought I had it on here, that talks about the grain offerings being a sin offering.
The grains offering being a sin
Yes. You can bring grain
for sin.
for sin. Okay? You can bring a grain offering. Let's see. It may be under the sin offering. Let's see.
Any kind of grain or just a certain grain? Or certain grains?
Any kind of grain?
Hold on. I do want to mention this before we go any further, that in verse 14, chapter 1, verse 14, when it's talking about the bird offerings, okay, most translations say that you bring the head of the bird. No, you don't. It's a mistranslation, okay? The Talmud talks about how, or the Mishnah, I think it's the Mishnah, talks about how the priest had one nail that was long and that they would sever the head. The truth of the matter is the head is to be severed. It's supposed to be cut off. Okay? Because wringing the head stresses the animal. Where I grew up at, that's the way some people kill chickens. They'll grab it by the head and they'll swing it around. And then once they actually break the head off and the body falls, the body just runs around.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's a stressed animal. That's considered an illegitimate way of killing a bird because you've caused stress to the animal. The clean cut, there's no stress.
Talking about the axe.
Or the knife.
On a bird?
Yeah.
A knife on a bird?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's knives designed just to cut the head off of the bird.
To cut the head, again, to cut
Cut
it
the head
off.
Yes.
They're very thin.
Now here's the thing, is that birds have very little blood. So the way the Hebrew reads here, that when you are trying to get the blood out of the pigeon, you have to squeeze it. You have to crush it in your hands to get blood out of it.
Really?
Yes, you have to squeeze it. And there's so little blood in it that if you just turn it upside down, it won't come out. You literally have to squeeze.
You ring it.
Yes, the body. That's why it tells you how to manipulate the body. Once you squeeze the blood out of it, you're to rip it open, tear its digestive system out. Because that is...
Ring first or tear it out first?
So you cut the head off,
Right.
then you tear it open,
Cut
and
it,
you remove...
and then squeeze the blood.
Yeah.
Okay, blood. So yeah, a grapefruit squeezer would work pretty good for that.
And then that bird, the wings are then broke off. And then all of that, the body, the wings, all of that is then put on the fire.
After you defeather.
So there's a lot of process even on the giving of that animal.
That's what it takes to eat.
And the male does it, right? Not
Somebody
the-
does
It's
that.
yeah.
Somebody
My
does
husband
that for
does
you
it.
every time you get a chicken, every time we sit around getting fat eating. That's all the work that we didn't have to do.
Okay.
I mean, think about, you think cooking's a job, right? Well, think about if you had your raise a chicken and you had to go through the whole process. That's real life.
I saw that.
That is real life.
Now,
We've been isolated and isolated from all.
let me bring this up. I can't find it now, and I thought I had the verse here. I'm sorry, guys, but let me see if I can find it right quick. There's a verse that actually talks about the grains used for atonement for sin. And this is the reason that Hebrews says that almost everything is purged with blood. Because sin can be purged without blood. It can. It can. Also, there's another aspect to this. Okay? The second aspect, let's look at this. Are you ready? So we've talked about intentional and unintentional sins. We've talked about the blood, right? But in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22, King Saul goes and is supposed to conquer a king and kill everything, right? Saul doesn't do that. He keeps the animals, keeps the beautiful women, the young children, kills the king.
Sounds like the common libtards of the day.
Yeah, so he brings it out. He brings it out. Samuel comes to him and says, "What is this bleating of the sheep I hear?" And he said, "Well, I'll just offer a sacrifice." What does Samuel say to him? God does not desire sacrifice. He desires obedience. Obedience. Okay? Samuel's whole thing is his command given to him by Samuel or Saul. Saul was commanded by Samuel to totally eradicate this tribe. He chose not to. And his thought was, I'll just offer a sacrifice. And Samuel says, not so. Doesn't work that way. So us thinking that a sacrifice purges our sins automatically, not so. Okay? Not so. Look at Isaiah chapter 1.
What were you saying again?
Isaiah chapter 1.
Yeshayahu.
You ready? Verse 11 says, "To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me?" Who do you think is speaking?
God.
Saith the Lord. I am full of burnt offerings of rams, the fat of fatted beasts, and I did not delight in the blood of bullocks or of lambs or he-goats. You see that? Now, why? Why does he not delight in those things?
Because they're done on purpose.
Yeah.
They didn't obey, they just did on purpose.
Hosea 6:6. This is what God says. Are you ready? For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. So this cuts to the core about these offerings. Blood offerings was never meant to purge our sins. God always wanted us to be obedient to his word. The sacrifices was given for unintentional sins. Unintentional, by mistake. But intentional sins, there's no guarantee of forgiveness. Look at Micah. How do you say that in Hebrew?
I think it's Mika.
Micah is how
I
it's said.
think so. Yeah, like Mika Moha, Baalim, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's Mika.
6, verses 6 and 7. It says, wherewith shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and with thousands of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? It says, it hath been told thee, O man, what is good, and what the Lord doth require of thee, only to do justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly before your God.
Act justly and to love.
Mercy, and to walk humbly before your God. It was never about sacrifice. Never.
So does it mean to be merciful?
Both.
To love and be
To,
merciful?
I mean, what's to the one who extends mercy?
That's mercy.
It is, what is it called? Meagid,
Measure for measure.
measure for measure. Meagid,
Oh, yeah. I can't remember.
measure for measure. You extend mercy, you get mercy.
Oh, God. I hear it all the time. I can never remember that one.
Yeah. Meagid, Miga,
Something like that.
Yeah. Hosea 14:1. Now listen, guys. So, which two offerings are mandatory?
The ones by
Trespass and sin.
And sin offerings. Those are mandatory when you do unintentional sins.
The 4th and the 5th?
The 4th and the 5th.
Hosea what?
Okay, wait a minute. But, what if you've done rebellious sin?
Then it's the peace offering.
No, because a peace offering is a fellowship offering.
Oh, then it's the.
So you're separate. Wait. You've intentionally broke God's word, his commands, and you think you can walk up into the tabernacle and give a fellowship offering to God?
So there's no offering for that? Why in the world?
Let me give you a story. Let me give you a story to explain this. There are two stories. Okay? Are you ready for this? You're going to love this. I'm telling you.
Hold on, let me get settled.
Okay? Turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 33.
Chronicles?
2 Chronicles chapter 33. What did God say that he always loves? What did we just read in Hosea?
Obedience.
Obedience is a sacrifice.
No, guys.
What
He
does-
said mercy, humility, knowledge of God. These are the things that he loves. This is what God loves. This is what he loves to see in us.
Humility, what?
You just read it, babe.
Say it again.
Justice, humility, mercy, and knowledge of God. I think that's the four things it says.
That's why we should always go in humility.
Justice, humility.
That was Micah chapter 6, verse 7. It says, "Oh man, what is good that the Lord hath
Neil Young,
required
I'm
you."
sorry. What did you say?
Micah.
I meant Neil Young, sorry.
That's okay. 6, 7.
Oh,
Or
man.
actually
Oh, man.
8. It says, "It hath been told thee, O man, what is good, and what it is that the Lord doth require of you, only to do justly, love mercy, walk humbly before your God." 3 things. Now, do these 3 things have anything to do with sacrifice?
No,
No. It has to do with what?
your heart.
How you walk contritely before God. look at this. I want to show you something. All right? Now, 2 Chronicles chapter 33, verse 1. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abomination of the nations, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had broken down. He reared up altars to Balaam and made Asherah poles, and worshipped all the host of heaven and served them. And he built altars in the house of the Lord. Wherefore the Lord said, in Jerusalem shall my name be forever. And he built altars for all the host of the heavens in the two courtyards, in this courtyard and this courtyard.
Hosea did all that?
No, Manasseh. Turn to the verse. Read the verse.
I don't remember.
2 Chronicles 33, babe.
33.
He built altars for the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Lord. He also made children to pass through the fire in the valley and the sons of Hinnom. So he did child sacrifice. He practiced soothsaying and he used enchantments. He practiced sorcery and appointed them that divine by ghost or familiar spirit. He wrought much evil in the eyes of the Lord. Wow. So was this man wicked?
Yes.
Watch this. He set graven images of idols which he had made in the house of God, and in which he said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem which I have chosen, out of all the tribes of Israel will I put my name forever. You see that? Look at verse 9. And Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Judah of Jerusalem to err, so that they did evil more than the nations whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel. You see that? Now look what happened to it. Verse 10. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but he gave no heed to them. Wherefore the Lord brought them captains of the host of the king of Assyria, and took Manasseh with hooks. Daniel, you got to check this out. Verse 11, 33:11. The word hooks there is thorns.
33:11 Leviticus?
No, 2 Chronicles. The word there is thorns, so the idea is that they put a crown of thorns on Manasseh.
Really?
Yes.
Hold on, I'm looking.
Like Yeshua?
Say it again.
Wow.
But what did you mean about the nose? The nose is not up here.
I didn't say anything about the nose.
No, it's because she read the rest of the chapter and it says like put a hook through his nose.
Oh, those first ones.
2 Chronicles 33:11 says, wherefore the Lord brought upon them captains of the host of the kings of Assyria, who took Manasseh with hooks. It actually says in thorns.
Mine says thorns.
It's thorns. The idea is that he was crowned because he was a king with thorns.
Well, here it says they took Manasseh among the thorns.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can get the symbolism.
Yeah. And bound him with fetters and carried him into Babylon.
Next verse, and when he was in affliction, he besought the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of our fathers. I mean, that fits.
That's
perfect.
it, right there.
That
All
fits
that he did.
perfectly.
Look what it says. Daniel jumped ahead. Verse 12, and he went in distress
You're
and
welcome.
besought the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly. What does this mean? That he come with a broken heart before God. Think about it. He is stripped away from his kingdom. He's probably bruised and battered, probably bleeding if he was led away in thorns. And he comes in captivity and he humbles himself before God. And he prayed, and he was entreated of him, and heard his supplication, and brought him back to Jerusalem, his kingdom. And Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God. Now watch this. Now after this, he built an outer wall on the city of David on the west side of Geshon, in the valley, even to the entrance of the fish gate. And he compassed about Ophel. But look, Look at 15. And he took away the strange gods, the idols out of the house of the Lord, and the altars. And he had and built in the mount of the house of God and in Jerusalem, and cast them out of the city. He had built up an altar to the Lord and offered thereupon sacrifices of what?
Fellowship.
Fellowship. He did not offer a sin sacrifice. Why? Because his heart was contrite. Turn to Psalms 51. Psalms 51. Psalm 51 is actually 2 Psalms in one.
What is it?
Psalms 51. Okay? David wrote this psalm in 2 different periods of his life. The first psalm starts at Psalm, even though in ours it's called Psalm 51, Psalms 51:1, for the leader, a psalm of David. Verse 2, when Nathan the prophet came unto him after he had gone to Bathsheba, be gracious unto me, O God, according to thy mercy. According to the multitude of thy compassions, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquities, and cleanse me from my sins. For I know my transgression, and my sin is ever before me. Against thee, thee only have I sinned, and done that which is evil in thy sight. Do you see David's prayer? Was he broken? Yes. But look, verse 17, if you're reading from an English translation, it'll be verse 15. I mean, a Christian translation. In the Hebrew, it's 17. It's verse 17. Now, Daniel, this will get to something here. It says, O Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall declare their praise. For thou delightest not in sacrifice, else would I give it. Thou hast no pleasure in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of God are what?
A broken spirit.
A broken spirit and a contrite heart. Oh, thou wilt not despise. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always the one that atones for sin is the is the sin. Okay, I've been building to this all night. The unintentional.
We'll trust you. Go ahead.
The unintentional sin is one that is atoned by blood. But
Your blood.
Okay. However,
Right?
the intentional
Our
sin,
blood.
there is no
Jeez.
blood that can atone for rebellious sin, intentional sin. It is the broken heart and the contrite spirit. What did David say here that he would offer? A burnt offering. What is a burnt offering? It's the first offering. It's a free will offering that atones for your sins. So when you are rebellious, it is a burnt offering, meaning you choose to give it, not because it's given because it's mandated. It's given because you choose to give it. So your heart is connected to that offering with a contrite heart. What always follows that offering? A peace offering, a fellowship offering, which is what kind of offering?
Thankful.
Volunteer.
Yes, it's a voluntary offering. So when you rebelliously sin, the 2 offerings that get you back with God is a free will choice offering. Now here's the thing, with Manasseh, he did not do the burnt offering. He did the fellowship offering. Why? Because like David here, he was broken in his spirit. It's always been about a broken spirit. It's never been about blood. It's always been about the condition of your heart. The only time blood can redeem you is when it's accidental. When it's purpose.
And that's the offering God desires from us.
A contrite heart.
When it's purpose, what?
The only thing that can bring you back is a contrite heart.
Because with a contract heart, you realize and you accept that you did wrong.
You are broken.
Broken, and you're ready to make
Yes,
a change and have a relationship.
that's a good
Yes.
sample of a sample.
Yes,
The
yes.
prodigal
See,
son.
she simplified it for you, bro.
Okay, so when you look at this, okay,
Yeah.
so now verses 20. Oh, Daniel, you're gonna love this. It says, "Do good." We're still in Psalm 51. Daniel, this is 20 in Hebrew. In the English translations, it'll be verse 18. It says, "Do good in the favor of Zion. Build out the walls of Jerusalem." What does this actually mean? Hativa, you want to read that in Hebrew, Daniel?
Kilo takfot sebak the etna ola lo tirza.
Tirazah.
18. That was 18.
Yes. What this really means is rebuild with your desire, Zion. Build the walls of Jerusalem. Then he shall, now look at verse 21 or 19. "And thou shalt delight in the sacrifices of righteousness." The sacrifices of righteousness is the broken heart and contrite spirit. In that, then, in burnt offerings and whole offerings. Then they will offer bullocks. Notice it wasn't sheep, goats, and pigeons. They're going to bring the most expensive offering, which is the bull. And he says, he then accepts a righteous sacrifice, which is a broken heart. With that comes the burnt offering and the bulls to go upon the altar. Because when you're really broken, you'll give the best that you can give.
Exactly, yes.
Was that 29:19?
No, that's 59:19. Psalm.
59?
51. Thank you. 51:19. If you're reading into Hebrew, it's 21. Verse 21. Yes.
So your broken heart, it beats all that.
It always has. It's always been about the broken heart. The broken heart, not blood. It's never been about blood. It's been about broken spirit. When he dwelt amongst them, where did he dwell? Was it in the tabernacle?
No.
He dwelt
In
in them.
Wow.
It's always been about a contrite heart. So even if you believe that Yeshua died for your sins, that death is nullified if you are not contrite. No offering will get you forgiveness
So
of sin.
there we go. Now that kind of covers the question about the sacrifice of our lips.
Now, there is, okay, let me give you this verse.
Let's just play with that at this point.
No, there's a verse here. There's an actual verse. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it.
In 91 and 51?
No. Hold on.
How do you say? Sacrifice of our lips?
Well, that's what the rabbis love to teach, that,
Yeah.
that makes up for the sacrifices on the altar and all that now.
Oh.
Sacrifices is now prayer,
Okay.
which I get, it takes work to sit there and talk and think and, put all that out there. It's definitely work.
Hosea 14. Turn there.
Hoshea.
Hosea 14.
Hoshea.
And I'm glad you brought it back up because that's a part of this.
Hoshea 14.
Okay? Starting at verse 1, in Hebrew, it's 2. It says, "Return, O Israel, unto the Lord thy God, for thou hast stumbled in thine iniquity." Verse 2, "Take you your words and return unto the Lord. Say unto him, Forgive all iniquity, and accept that which is good, so that we render for bullocks the offerings of our lips."
Here it says, so we'll render the calves of our lips.
Okay?
Prayers?
Yes. Now, verse 3, it says, "Ashur shall not save us," or "Asher shall not save us. Will not ride upon horses, neither will we call any more for the works of our hands our gods. For in thee the fatherless finds mercy." Look at verse 4. "I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely, for my anger is turned away from him. So, yes, here's the thing, Daniel, and this is going to tie it all together. The Hebrew phrase where it says that they lean upon them, it's a Hebrew idiom that means they confess their sins. So, this picture goes back to here. It's silent. But the bringer brings the sacrifices, leans upon the animal, confesses their sin to God. That's the only noise made in the tabernacle, the confession of sin.
Wow. And he had to scream, really.
We're talking about Hosea 14, 1 and 2, right?
Yes. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I'll tell you the Hebrew there. My Hebrew is really bad, or I don't see it in the English translation anywhere near what it's.
It says the suffering of our lips.
Well,
The offering of our lips.
here it says calves of our lips, but.
But what is a calf?
Well, it's the back of my lower leg.
No, it's not.
The cow?
It's the cow. It's the sacrifice of the cow, which is the bull. So it's literally saying the calf of my lips, the sacrifice of my lips. That's literally what it's saying in the Hebrew.
From the 8th day.
Well, I'm reading the Hebrew, and
And it says calf, but what is a calf? It's not the back of your leg. It's in
a
context.
calf is an egel, and that word is not here.
No, but this calf is dealing with sacrifice. You're talking about
All I'm
repentance.
saying is I'm reading the Hebrew here on Hosea 14:2.
And I am too.
Shuva Yisrael ad Adonai Elohecha ki kashleta be'avoneha.
Yes.
So you're reading the exact same thing.
Yes. But the calf is not your leg.
I understand. I'm playing with you on that one.
So
Calf is an egel.
Huh?
Like the golden calf?
Yes.
That was an egel.
Yes.
There's no egel in this phraseology here.
Daniel, could that word not be?
There's no behemah here either.
Daniel, it is.
There's no behemah in the
Okay,
Hebrew.
I'm not going to
in this
argue
verse.
with you, Daniel. The bullocks are there. What were you going to say?
Keshalta, that's the only word that could be there. Like, and I don't know what shalta is. It's the only word I don't recognize in this whole phrase.
Let's see.
It's the second to the last word.
Let's see. Leviticus. What are we reading?
Hosea 14:2.
Hosea 14. What were you going to? What were you asking?
Yeah, let's see, Kefa, what's up?
No.
Because the first word, shuba, repent, return. Okay? Yisrael, ad, Adonai Elohecha, pretty simple. Ki, kashalta, and then ba'avoneha.
Okay, look at verse 2.
I am.
Take. Hosea 14:2.
Yeah, that's the cock, if I'm not mistaken, in here.
QA.
Nowhere there.
Okay. What's the third word?
And then words. There's no
Word.
debar in there.
That is dabarim.
Where? In verse 2?
Yes.
There is absolutely no debar in. I want to see yours. Let me
And
see
you know
what you're
what?
saying.
This is the one that will
Let me
change
see
it
what
stuff.
you're saying.
Right here.
Let me see. What's your Hebrew say?
Dabarim.
Hosea 14:1. Look at my 14. Look at mine. Let me see yours.
Take with you words.
I know.
Take with you
Shuba.
and return
Okay,
to the Lord.
I'm reading this, and that's verse 1 here. Okay, that's verse 3 in mine.
Okay, verse 3.
That's where
That's where we're arguing that. Verses. Yeah, because
I'm just telling you what I see.
well, we figured it out.
Well, at least,
Yeah.
that's the good thing.
Yeah, we figured
Let me
it out.
look at it
So
now.
it is dabarim, which is words. Take words with you and return to Yahweh. And say unto him, and take away iniquity and receive us graciously. For we will offer you sacrifices of our lips. sacrifices of our lips.
But see, the sacrifices of our lips, if you will, is up in verse 2, not in verse 3.
We can,
I mean, it's just kind of weird the way it's laid out here.
yeah,
And I don't know what the word for lips is in Hebrew, so I'm stuck on that.
so let's see, here, lips is,
Here I got, or what's it say?
let me get,
I like yours. Yours has you got the interlinear there.
and return to Israel, I'm reading verse 1, to Yahweh your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take with you words and return to him, Yahweh, saying to him, all take away iniquity and receive us graciously, for we will offer sacrifices of our lips. It's the word that you don't know. Sepetenu,
What? Okay, which you're in verse 3.
shin, I think it's verse 3 for you.
Shin, Fe, Tav, or Tav, Yod, Nun,
Vav, yes.
Vav. That's
Yeah,
it.
That's of our lips.
Shaftenu.
Yes.
But see, that is back in verse 2 where it says of our lips in verse 2. So this is weird. This is way out there. I mean, it's really messed up. That Shefatenu is in my verse 3, but of our lips is in verse 2.
That's kind of weird.
That's what I'm trying to say. In this particular one, it's just way out there, so it's got me.
Yeah, we would have to look at probably a better resource than what both of us have right now.
Yeah. I've got some others, but
Yeah,
I don't. This
now,
is just
who I learned this from was a Torah, was a
I'm glad you and I know how to argue properly.
yeah, a Hebrew specialist, and that's the point that he brought out, is that our lips are sacrifices, and that is the righteous sacrifice.
In other words, keep them closed.
Keep them closed.
Yeah, I think so.
Irma had a question.
Well,
Yes.
because I remember when we were Christians, we were taught, be careful what you say.
Sure.
Keep the words, don't say anything negative, don't say anything that's gonna end up coming back against you in a negative way. But then come to find out that your words is talking about the prayers, right?
Yeah,
So it's not
see,
necessarily-
you gotta be careful with what we were taught in Christianity, because it's mixed with Western philosophy.
Big time.
Because Western philosophy teaches about the power of your words and you creating it, which they always relate that to what God did in Genesis 1:1. God using words. Well, we're created in his image, we can use our words to create worlds. Well, that's not what Torah is teaching. It's not what Torah is teaching. That is an implied meaning.
Okay,
Because here's the thing, is, like you just said, it says, don't say anything negative. Well, what about what was just said? Don't say it. That's negative. You see what I'm
That's a
saying? Don't say
command.
anything negative.
That's
Well, you
more
just
of a
said,
command.
Yeah.
That's more of an instruction.
yeah, you've already said something
Well,
negative.
okay, we're not, none of us are perfect.
No, no,
right?
no,
When
no,
you
I'm
get
I'm
upset, you say things that you really don't mean, you just wanna,
Get it out.
But the trick is, how do you learn to not maintain control and not ever get to a point to where you're saying things you don't mean just because I'm emotional. You gotta sit there and listen to me. It's like I feel like saying it. We love our own anger. We love our own emotion. We think we have to say it. We're like little kids.
no, I know that.
It's ridiculous what we do as humans.
Right?
It's
But
horribly
that's not what he's
ridiculous.
talking about. He's talking about keep the words, the prayers,
Yeah.
in your mouth constantly as an offering.
Yeah.
Like God's word in your mouth?
See, here's the thing, is just think about this, okay? Yes, to answer your question, yes, our prayers. Yes, our prayers. But here's the thing, I've always said this, once I've really caught it. People always talk about being positive and not being negative. Well, life doesn't work that way.
Yeah, right.
You need both. You need positive and negative. Think about it. If we believe that there are 613 commandments, how are they divided? Positive
And negative.
and negative. You need both in your life. For us to say, we are only positive, I'm a positive thinker, you are far right.
God created evil.
Okay? He always is pessimistic. Wrong. He's not always pessimistic.
Yeah.
The truth is learning to balance both forces in your life. positive
that's
and
what it's
negative, because
about.
life throws negative stuff your way.
Yes.
To sit there and say it
How-
don't exist, that is foolishness.
Yes. I could be that.
That is foolishness. And if you're too far to the positive, you're off balance. If you're too far into the negative, you're off balance. You have to learn to strike a balance that there are positive. And what makes electricity?
Positive and negative.
We are energy.
Which kind of electricity?
But all energy flows positive and negative, does it not?
So the
Energy is never destroyed.
No, it's not.
So then how does a battery go out?
Because you drain it, it's not.
You have changed the energy to something else, probably heat at some place in that equation.
so evil spirits need some of holiness to survive.
Yes, I got a whole
I'd agree.
teaching on that. I got a whole teaching how that works.
We gotta hear that.
I got a whole teaching on how that works.
Bring it on.
Not right now.
Give us a little
Not
bit
to-
of
Just
it.
a little bit.
No, for the future. For the future. Not tonight.
But the point is you need both in your life.
Yeah.
If you're either one way or the other, you're off balance.
You're
A person who usually is overly positive, at some point they break. Because
Yeah, right.
they'll break. Because the truth is you're ignoring the obvious. There are negatives.
The expectations beat them up.
Yeah. Huh?
You're not being real.
No, that's what I'm saying. The truth, the whole system works on our whole system today works on positive and negative energies.
Yeah.
It's how you learn to manipulate and control it.
Yeah.
And it's all because we ate from or got the tree of knowledge of
That's
good and
right.
evil.
That's
Where it
that's
comes
it.
from. Before that, it wasn't true. We did not, it was there, but we didn't operate under it. So what does that tell us? There is a system that is not a positive negative system, but that's the system we work in.
That's exactly right from day one. Day 6.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Day 6.
Okay? So that's the truth of the matter. Now, my question is, if there is a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is a positive negative system, which we operate under now, and there is a tree of life, which he didn't get to, what was he living in?
Paradise,
Light.
Parties.
But what is that?
Light.
the light of God.
Again,
Innocence.
what is that?
We'll never know until
Exactly.
we die. We have no
We so in there we see three things that exist. Whatever Adam lived in, which we don't know what that is called a garden.
We've had a glimpse, very small glimpses on throughout our
In
lives.
Kabbalah, it's called paradise. But whatever that was, that garden was, that's the state that he lived in. What is that? I don't know. It wasn't trees and shrubs, though. I can tell you that. Okay? So that's what he lived in. He had a choice between two other lives, a life of truth or a life of a knowledge of good and evil.
You know,
He chose, or she chose knowledge instead of life.
you know what crossed my mind when you said that?
What?
What did he live in? It wasn't trees and shrubs. I thought of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. It's like the things that we cannot see. Can you imagine the things that we cannot see, we cannot hear because of our limited humanity?
Oh, yeah.
There's so much out there that's still,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would be a heck of a ride. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yes, babe.
Peter said innocence.
That's what we call it. Innocence, but what is that?
He said innocence.
That's what we define it as.
What is it?
But what is it? In its purest form, whatever the garden was, what is it?
A baby.
Man who?
You see? So whether we realize it or not, there are three states that are in existence in that place. The garden, truth,
The mother's womb.
and the knowledge of good and evil. And why? Let me ask you this: why did he eat from the knowledge of good and evil?
Because she gave it to him. Come on.
Why was she
Let me
tempted with
blame
it?
shift. Come on.
Why was she tempted with it?
Because the
Is
snake
that
seduced her.
otherwise we wouldn't-
She wanted to be controlling.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Listen,
Sure.
listen.
I
Listen
don't disagree.
to what the serpent said. The serpent said, he planted this thought. He said, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. She wanted to be God.
Much like today.
She wanted to be God.
No.
That's what she
Coming
wanted.
from a woman?
No, it's because
That's what he tempted her with, and that's what she fell to. The
that
knowledge.
was the other one.
The other
Want to
one.
be like
That was Lilith?
She wanted to
Well,
be like God.
That was the other one.
Lamed Yod Lamed Tav.
She wanted to be like God.
From
In
Lamed
her
Tav.
desire, she did not want to submit to her husband. She wanted to be like God. Oh.
There's some
Ooh.
husbands you can.
That's gonna
That's
be
not true.
hours of stuff if we keep going
No,
down
I'm
this
talking
road.
about-
It's already 10 o'clock, you know that, right?
Yeah.
No,
So,
I'm not talking about
so
my husband.
the point
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
What do you mean like God?
No,
the serpent tempted her
Well, yeah.
that God had knowledge. Now, see, when you begin to dissect this, it goes into a lot of stuff because you begin to read what's not there. Okay? You begin to look at intention. You begin to see between the lines.
That's so true.
Okay? What he tempted her with was the knowledge to be like God. So what was his real temptation? That God is withholding from you. Here's another thing that he's suggesting. God got his power from this tree.
You're
And
right.
if you eat from this tree, you'll be like God, knowing both good and evil. And guess what? He did not lie to her.
That's true.
He did not lie. People say that he deceived her. He did not. Because when God sees
Hold
it,
on.
God actually looks at him and says, man has become like us, knowing both good and evil. So the serpent did not.
Who's us?
Hold on.
That's a good question. And that's something that's debated throughout the ages.
I love
But
that
here
thing.
in the Hebrew, us is a royal us, meaning God himself. Not that he took counsel with anyone.
Okay.
Not that he took counsel within himself. That's what I was always taught. He took within Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and had counsel. No, he didn't do that. Nor did he counsel with the angels. That is a midrash.
Mm.
So Hebraically, all it could be is us being him. Within
And it
himself.
says, like Elohim's, it does not say like Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh.
God's.
God's. Yeah, it doesn't say Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh.
I'm paid.
So that's cool.
See? So there's a lot of stuff to unpack there.
Sephiroth.
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot.
Okay.
I would definitely agree with that.
But I will tell you this, people think it was the food. It wasn't the fruit. It was what the fruit gave. It gave knowledge. She desired knowledge. What knowledge? The knowledge of God.
Shouldn't we desire that?
Yeah, but
We all
they
should.
took it ahead of, right?
Here's
They
the
took it
thing.
ahead of-
Now you're getting into theoretical things. Now here's what the rabbis teach, is that had he eaten from truth first, he would have redeemed knowledge. And that was man's real role.
To do knowledge.
He would have had truth or
Okay.
life, the tree of life. Then he would have redeemed, because these two trees are called also, just like you have the tree of life. What is the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Death.
Here's the deception. The snake is saying, God has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it. That's the deception. He never said touching it was
Yeah.
a problem.
That's what Eve said.
So
No,
Eve
that's
lied.
what the snake said to Eve. Reading it.
Oh, okay.
But Eve
So
said
that's
that-
where the deception is.
But
He
did
added
Eve,
that
wait,
to
wait,
it.
wait, did Eve say it before him
Yes.
in previous verses? Because she actually, in talking with the serpent, said that God told us not to eat or touch.
She
Is
lied.
he just reiterating what she said?
Yes.
Right, yeah. She sat there, added the touch part.
Yeah. So he just repeated her deception to herself.
Yeah.
How easy.
Did God really say don't eat and touch it?
No,
Did
he
he
never
really
said
say
nothing about touching it. That was never said.
She said it though, and he
She
just
said
played it, he just played her words back to him.
Yeah, right?
Did he say that you couldn't eat it and touch it?
You said, do not eat of the tree of knowledge.
I thought he said, do not eat nor
Yeah.
touch.
Yeah, you can-
No, he said do not eat of the
Eat of
tree.
it, of the tree, no.
He never said touch it. He never said don't touch it.
Well, in order to eat it, you must
She can
touch
still touch it though.
Arum is the word for,
The whole fact that
Subtle.
he lied.
is
And see, here's another thing. What is a serpent?
No
Nahash.
one knows.
a deceiving person.
No, we don't really know. Because this serpent walked. That's not anything that we've ever seen.
Lizards. It's a snake.
That's what we
That's what
translated
you call-
as.
that's what
But
you call
again,
somebody's-
what is the Garden of Eden?
Might be a metaphor.
Couldn't it be lizard?
A reptile. Could it be a reptile?
And if it's that deep?
Look, in Hebrew, it is nasash, which is a serpent.
Nahash.
Nahash, which is a serpent. But the truth is in its original context, what is a nahash? Because this nahash is not like any nahash any of us have ever seen, or any that's on this planet. It walked and talked.
Or maybe it was not necessarily the snake. It was just a figure of speech, you know. I mean, Joshua says, I am the Lord, was not a God.
Now, here's the thing. This is why when you get into the measure for measure, this is where the whole holy snake comes in at.
Holy snake.
Light,
Well, let's talk about 358 now.
light, dark.
You see?
What's a
What's a holy snake?
The holy snake? Is that like the kosher pig?
No, the holy snake is, okay, so what did Moses put in the garden, for
They
them to
lifted
eat?
up a serpent.
a serpent?
Yeah.
You erected
So
a
the
serpent
rod-
and a snake,
The
The
brown
rod
snake.
fell-
snake on us.
The holy snake is the terminology?
Yes,
What's a holy snake?
the Mashiach is going to be a holy serpent.
Holy snake.
Yeah, if I be lifted up, I get that. So again, Mashiach is the 358 also, believe it or not.
Yeah, he will be,
Same
it's
as
numerology, it's
Gematria.
gematria.
No, but what do you mean he will be a snake? Holy snake, she's just stuck on the
Equal to.
Equal to.
If you looked upon the snake, you were saved. If you look to Mashiach on the stake, you will be saved. It's the same parallel. And they have the same gematria, 358. Just like the dreidel, Neskadol Hayasham has a 358 associated with that. The breastplate has a 358, and there's a 5 of them. What's the other one?
I don't know.
Neskadol Hayasham, there's 5.
So, there's a bunch to all of this, guys. Sorry, we went over, guys.
Don't apologize, this is great.
I hope you enjoyed it. Do you guys online, the people here are already packing up, so you guys online, do y'all have any questions about what we talked about? Yeah, y'all never asked me squat, y'all just.
We never
That
asked.
was a lot.
Beth, is there anything? All right, guys, we're gonna sign off. That last part will not be in the recording, about all of that.
Oh, why not? Keep it in there, it makes it good.
Good stuff.
Say goodbye, Scotty.
Shalom.
No, say goodbye, Scotty.
Oh, goodbye, Scotty.
There you go, thank you.